Good day, our esteemed viewers, listeners, and subscribers to Ascent Radio, and welcome to another interesting and exciting edition of Let's Talk with Ascent Litigation. And I remain your host, your favorite friend on radio, Barrister David Njoko Ono. And here on Ascent Radio, what we do basically is to enlighten you, our wonderful listeners, on the happenings in our society and how they relate to law, and then how the law regulates the activities and actions of both citizens and government in the society, so as to ensure and engender a better and more developed society where everybody is subsumed or everybody is subjected under the rule of law, and then they work in accordance with the law. Because it's only when you work in the rule of law that you will not have a reincarnation of the Thomas Hobbes state of nature, where life was brutish, poor, nasty, and it was terrible. But under the rule of law, everybody is guided, and then everybody ensures they work under the rule of law. And here in Ascent Litigation, what we discuss is topical legal issues, whether they are political, whether they are educational, whether they are sports, entertainment, as well as they have connotation of law. We discuss them on this very program. And what a day to discuss topical issues like the Lagos Calabar coastal road and government's obligation to pay compensation. That is our topic for today: the Lagos Calabar coastal road and government's obligation to pay compensation. You know, there are several issues going on today in our country. Just yesterday, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics did release the April inflation statistics, and what a staggering number: 33.8% inflation rate, with food inflation rate as high as 40.53%. And that same yesterday, the Nigerian Labour Congress put out from its negotiation with federal government on a new minimum wage, for which the government is proposing a 48,000 naira as minimum wage in an economy that is 33.8% in inflation and food inflation at 40.53%. Then you ask yourself, is it commensurate? And in all this, in the midst of this economic pandemic, the pandemic of empty pockets of Nigerians, the federal government is now saying that they want to embark on the Lagos Calabar coastal highway, which is going to cover over 700 kilometers of road and will go around 11 trillion naira. What a staggering sum. And then Nigerians are still complaining about that, about the design and all that. And then the government is saying this road we are going to construct, which is a 10-lane road, 5 on each side, is going to gap several houses of private individuals, and then these houses for private individuals will be acquired by government for the purpose of public interest, which is the construction of the road. And that is what informed our topic today, because whether it is private business owners or community owned land, businesses are suffering, businesses are crying out that their lands has been taken, especially within the coastline of Lagos State, that their lands have been taken for the purpose of the coastal road. Of recent, just on Tuesday, the Federal Executive Council of the Federal Republic of Nigeria decided to approve for the second phase of the Lagos Calabar coastal road, for which there was a redesign, and then about 1.4 trillion naira was earmarked for that, and the rerouting of the redesign of the second phase of the Lagos Calabar coastal highway within the Lagos axis or the Lagos coastline is now going to be affecting new set of businesses. A first phase of the coastline demolition affected a prominent business known as Landmark Resorts. The beach area, the beach houses, and all businesses along that coastline of Landmark were all demolished for the purpose of the coastal road. And then the second phase, we now hear that our own popular, the Good Beach, is equally going to be affected, and other coastline properties, especially the coastline property that has the highest concentration of container houses anywhere in the world today along a coastline is equally going to be affected, and it's equally has been marked for demolition. So the question is, these property owners, do they have any remedy in law? Do they have, is it just because the government wants to make use of your land, you are now obligated to forfeit your land to government for the purpose of public interest? Where is the marriage between public interest and personal interest when it comes to building of public infrastructure such as the Lagos Calabar coastal road? And that is what has informed our topic for today. Now, under the Nigerian Constitution, it provides that it is a fundamental human right of all Nigerians to own properties anywhere in Nigeria. So I can come from Kwara Mahmuda in Sokoto State and I own a property in Tambras in Bayelsa. I can come from the very remotest of the villages in Borno State, and I can own a property in this very mangrove, deep mangrove of River State or the Delta. There is no limitation as to where a Nigerian citizen can own property in Nigeria. Any part of Nigeria you can own property. Now, if the government decides to take the property from you, that is a private individual, for the purpose of erecting public facility, the question is, you as an individual, are you entitled to any form of compensation or remedy in law? Now, the answer is simply, you are entitled to compensation. Now, what amounts to compensation is what now forms the fulcrum of the problem, or the litany of problems later on when government decides to take over this property. Now, it's not just that you as an individual, because let's put it this way, as government has the right to take over any property owned by a private individual for the purpose of public good or public use, because it is the principle that public interest will always override personal interest. Now, government, in exercising that right they have under the Land Use Act to compulsorily acquire any piece of property for the purpose of public use, that same government has the obligation to pay adequate and reasonable compensation to those individuals whom they've collected those property for the purpose of converting to public use or public good. Now, whether it is the management of landmark or the land management of the good beach or the communities along the Ibejuleki coastline, for which this coastal road, the Lagos Calabar coastal road, will equally pass through, or even those property owners at the far end point zero or in Calabar, that this coastline is going to terminate. Every individual whose property is to be affected by this construction of this Lagos Calabar coastal road is entitled to adequate compensation by government. And what amounts to adequate compensation is a compensation that has been assessed by a property valuer, accredited property valuer. So if the government decides to go to any village, maybe in the course of, because the road construction, the Lagos Calabar coastal road is going to cost across over 7 states. If any of these states, for which is an hinterland, and the road is going to pass through it, and that land is owned by the community or by individuals, for government to acquire that land, government needs to engage an accredited estate valuer who will value the worth of that property, and then it is based on that valuation that both government and the individuals will now sit and negotiate. The law does not allow the government of Nigeria, either the federal government or the government of the state, to superimpose any amount as the amount for compensation on a property which government wants to compulsorily acquire or take over for the purpose of public use. That is the position of the law. And I believe you have been well informed today that while government has the right to take over any private property for the purpose of building public facility for public good, you, as the individual that owns that property, you are entitled to adequate compensation on the basis of evaluation done by an accredited estate or property valuer. And it's on the basis of that valuation report that you are to negotiate with government, and whatever agreement you guys arrive at now becomes the adequate and reasonable compensation for that property. But not for government to superimpose any form of compensation on you, even if that form of compensation is inadequate, now wanting to superimpose it on you as a property owner. It is your right to own property, and it's your right also to ensure that that property is not compulsorily acquired except there is reasonable and adequate compensation paid for such acquisition. And that is the end of our show today on Let's Talk with Asset Litigation. Next week, we hope to see you again, where we'll be discussing another very trending and topical issues. And who knows, we'll be discussing one of our very good friends in the music industry next week. Until we come again your way next week, remain blessed and keep the hope alive for a better Nigeria.